Rhiannon is the epitome of resilience. These are words that were shared to me by court staff after seeing Rhiannon for nearly all of 2020 be in their trial court department and hearing her story. Rhiannon is the epitome of resilience. She was 10 years old when her mother married Stan Mundy, and almost immediately he began sexually assaulting her repeatedly. And for 7 years, she sustained that abuse before she reported it to the Sacramento Sheriff's Department, and Detective, now Sergeant Kevin Darling, who's here today, did an incredibly thorough investigation. But the road to justice was so long. But Rhiannon was resilient. In 2012, a case opened in family court, and it took years before it culminated in a trial. And a visiting judge who presided over the family court trial did not sustain the petition. Instead, he found that he could not believe that a young girl would have suffered so long in silence. And so Rhiannon's worst fears came true because her brother and sister were returned to the home of a sexual predator. And it did not take long for that sexual predator to molest her sister. Everything that she had reported to prevent came true. And Detective Pam Linke from the Sacramento Sheriff's Department started an investigation, and our office filed charges in 2017, and yet still the road to justice was long. By the time I met Rhiannon, the pro per defendant had engaged in about 3 years of delay tactics, and she reminded me when we first met that this monster had taken over half of her life. But she was more concerned about her sister than she was for herself. She advocated for her sister. When it came time for them to testify, she created this beautiful basket that was filled with things to relax her the night before she testified, and a little stress animal that she could bring on the stand, magazines to occupy her in the hallways, although she didn't need them because Rhiannon was on the phone with her in the middle of her sister's testimony, encouraging her. You see, Rhiannon never thought about herself. Amidst all the investigation in the family court trials and the repeated sexual abuse, Rhiannon put herself through school. She got a degree in psychology from San Francisco State. She interned as at the San Francisco District Attorney's Office, and it wasn't long before they hired her as a victim advocate. And while she was traveling the long road to justice in her own case, she walked alongside other victims traveling their long road themselves. She advocated for other victims to make sure the fullest extent of the law was charged as felonies and not misdemeanors for the conduct committed against them, and she was their listening ear and their shoulder that they cried on when some of them disclosed to you for the first time their sexual abuse. And so Rhiannon is the epitome of resilience. And even though she was doing so much, she thought, this isn't enough. I need to do more. And so she enrolled in a master's program and is still a full-time student at Pepperdine University, getting her master's degree in psychology. And she testified in March of 2020, 1 week after taking her midterms, and the day before a pandemic was declared in our country. And the jury saw the resilience that Rhiannon had, and they bodied it themselves, and after nearly 4 months of delay from when Rhiannon testified before the jury could come back and even hear the defense's case. But every single one of them came back and swiftly delivered guilty verdicts. They didn't even have to hear your read back. They knew. It stuck with them for 4 months, her resilience. Rhiannon is an outstanding citizen not because she was a victim of horrendous repeated sexual assaults. She is an outstanding citizen because she did not let that define her. She did not let defeat in the family court dissuade her. She did not let 4 years of delayed prosecution derail her. Instead, she thought about others. She could have so easily crawled into a hole, and yet she's dedicating her life to help others crawl out of one. It's for these reasons, Anne Marie, that I submit to you, Rhiannon, for this year's Outstanding Citizen Award.
I've been thinking all week about what I should say here, and I'm still not quite sure, so please bear with me. First, thank you, Rhiannon, for sharing my story, and also thank you for the opportunity that gave Rhiannon the ability to share my story. It's something that I've considered doing for a long time. It was eight or 9 years ago, in 2 months, that I first met Detective Darling, and the fact that he is still here today to support me. Haven't really talked to him in that much time either, but that just shows like how amazing he is, and I think that can show you a glimpse into what my experience was like when I first came forward and made a report. And if it wasn't for him, and also Rhiannon really kicking it into high gear when she took on the case, and for Rafaela's support, I don't think I really would have made it through. So please don't let them give me all of the credit. But thank you all for being here, and thank you for this opportunity.